Right, we're back with Villaincast. This for the last couple of podcasts, due to poor internet, I've just been doing audio, but due to some complaints, this has now got a video version as well, which is appearing on YouTube. I think this is like episode 8 or 9. I'm not really keeping track anymore. I don't think Joe Rogan does either. Quick shout out to the sponsors. That's them done. But maybe one day I'll be able to say something.
To get old.
I'm going to say that one forever.
You back yourself into a corner now where you can never get sponsors.
Yeah, pretty much.
Although like, out on that gag.
It'll be someone eventually will show up. I hope. Then I can get a better webcam. This episode. So half the purpose of what I'm doing with these podcasts is to talk to people who maybe flying under the radar in certain ways, or not like super well-known high level, like well-known competitors, not saying not high level, but just weird ways that they've approached jiu-jitsu and weird stories that they have to tell. Also, I had Preet on one of the earlier episodes. That was Preet's obviously well known for his conceptual approach to defense in jiu-jitsu. When he was back in the UK just prior to lockdown, like within like the 6 months prior to lockdown, he did a seminar down in Cardiff at CF24, and I was very lucky to go down and just be a fly on the wall. I'm at Omied, and he has pretty much what, in his own words, what Preet has done for defense, almost done for offense, like that conceptual approach. And after reading some of his articles that he's kindly sent me, I can very much agree. So how are you doing, dude?
Yeah, I'm good.
Surviving,
yeah.
As we all are,
yeah.
with the lack of jiu-jitsu. So yeah, I don't want to butcher your history, so I'll let you introduce like your past in this sport. So when did you start? What is your like earliest memory of all this?
So it was about 11 years ago. Similar to a lot of people in terms of what drew me to jiu-jitsu was I was a fan of MMA. I was looking for a hobby that I could do that wasn't football. So I did football for years and then got a bit of an injury. And I actually first went into Tang Sudo. Are you familiar with?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, I was going to say it's Taekwondo-esque, I imagine.
It's like the precursor to Taekwondo. So I got into that. It was a martial art. I remember doing karate as a kid, and I had a friend who was doing Tang Sudo, so I went along with him. Went there for a few months, and then I had another friend who was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and as soon as he heard I was into martial arts, you know, the Jiu-Jitsu
Gracie challenge,
as we are, you know, what you're doing is rubbish. Jiu-Jitsu's better. So I went along and did one lesson with him, and just remember it feeling like I was trying to swim through sand for 2 hours. And my whole body was like pulsing the next day from just how crazy it was. And it just didn't stop since. So I got pretty hooked. So that was in Swansea with Chris Reese. And so I went from like doing no jiu-jitsu to doing like 4 or 5 sessions a week.
So you were that white belt mat rat then?
Oh yeah, from the start. I've got I think a lot of people who get to like where we are in terms of jiu-jitsu, like all the way to black belt, you have to have that in you, I think, you know, where it turns into a bit of an obsession, you know, the game of it, the atmosphere, the benefits you feel from testing yourself every day. And so
you can't see those guys who appear on the mats, don't you, with the like they're the ones who, like, I don't know, break a finger and then just tape it up and carry on rolling, or
Yeah.
Like they'll go home and like mutilate themselves and appear the next session, just sit on the side. They just can't quit. Like you couldn't make them leave.
Those are the people, like it's going to take a lot for them not to be here in 10 years time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned then Chris Reese.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, like some of the people listen to this are like not UK based. Like obviously we're all UK based and know Chris is, but for anyone who isn't super aware of who Chris is, like what's his background?
So I trained with Chris up to my purple belt. He's pretty synonymous with the UK scene as being like one of the first.
He was like one of those originals, isn't he?
Yeah, I think 2003 he was training, and first Welsh black belt. So and he's based in my hometown, so I started training with him. And then from there I moved to Cardiff with work. So through all this, I've still been working full time as an engineer. But yeah, I moved to Cardiff, trained with Rob Taylor, who was under Chris. And then about 6 years in, me and my main training partner, Bryn Jenkins, who is one of the top competitors, well, in the UK, no doubt, and definitely, yeah. At black belt in Europe, his name will be out there if people don't know it, but him and I are very similar in our approach to jiu-jitsu, and like a bit of a obsession with the conceptual approach, and like fundamentalists, as you might say.
Fundamentalists. So, that's got a different meaning sometimes.
But yeah.
Did you get that from Chris? Were your instructors the same, or did you go a completely different route?
I would say it was more back and forth with me and Bryn for that kind of approach. Like most people, it's a bit different now because there's more resources available in terms of like instructors that put DVDs out, but a lot of the time then things weren't as structured in terms of what we were learning. So we would do a lot of like technique farming, where you go out and you try and basically accumulate as much things as you can, and if something sticks, you go forward with it. But then that just didn't feel like it was very productive, if you know what I mean. It was too much trial and error.
I think that maybe comes from because there was a stronger traditional martial arts scene in the UK. Perhaps is like that's obviously how a lot of the karates and traditional jiu-jitsus and aikidos work, as you have a curriculum and a syllabus. I mean, I remember we're pretty much of the same era. I started early 2009, late 2008.
Yeah, same.
And it was Jiu-Jitsu University, Submissions 101, and
there
wasn't really much left on. There wasn't. I don't think YouTube was like massively useful in those days. It was like random hostings of videos, and it was like, I have a half guard. I need to go find a new half guard sweep or a new half guard pass. It was.
What I would do in the when I first started, so like new white belt, first couple of months, I go into training, I get caught with a submission, I'd go home, I'd go on YouTube, I'd look at the counter, then I'd go back into the next session, and then I'd have the counter for it, and then so I might get caught with something else, and that plus asking other training partners and your instructors, obviously, it's I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think lots of people have an issue with going to resources that aren't your instructor, but I've never been
That's like a weird reverence, isn't it? As in, again, I think that's kind of a hangover from traditional, as in, when the instructor gets referred to as sensei or professor or sifu or God only knows what, you have to have that reverence to them because they are the ancient one. How many universities operate the same way? As in, don't go research this, only listen to what your professor is telling you. Like, don't go read the book. Don't go.
Don't read other papers on it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what I say goes. It's like it's one of the only places where well, no, it is probably the only place, like, education wise, where you are told to listen to your teacher and your teacher only. If you do anything else, you're considered some sort of weirdo.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I think there's a change in that now.
yeah.
Like with the stuff that Prit and you and the rest of, like, the defensive wave that we're seeing, a lot of it is, let's put it out to the community and see what people think of it. You know what I mean? Like, we're doing this, and there's always a request for feedback and questioning, and it's never like, this is how it's done. It's this is how we think it's done under our testing, and we're confident in it, but we're open to feedback. And I think that's how it has to move forward. But we're lucky in Jiu-Jitsu that it's so open, that there is no syllabus. So we should just take advantage of it, you know.
There was, I think, that a question appeared, it might have been on Fanatics or the Underground or some sort of Facebook group the other day. The question of, it keeps coming up, but it's, I don't know, worth mentioning again, like, should there be a blue belt test? Do you test for belts in your gym? Do you think that's a wise idea? Or, I've got my own point of view, but I'd like to hear yours.
So we have, so the way that our like CF2 Jiu-Jitsu is structured is we teach in systems.
Right.
So the last time we had like a full year of teaching was 2019, and we covered 2 systems in the 12 months. So we spent 6 months on top half guard, we call it the ground zero, and then 6 months on I think it was like I can't even remember, guard or pins, but we basically we teach we use a systematic approach, and we stay on it for as long as we think we need to stay on it. So it could be that we're on it for 4 weeks, or we're on it for 6 months, as we did in 2019. But we have core systems that we expect every student that trains under us to have. Again, it's why I thought it was the similarity with the defensive stuff. I remember speaking to you, and you say all your guys learn that from the start, like the different turtle postures and all those things. And that's kind of like, you're like, you need to learn this. This is like your fundamentals, and they're all proficient at it before they get to whatever the next belt is. So we have that, but it's the reverse. So it's like back attack system. You know, Bryn is one of the best back attackers and back takers that you can ever roll with. Top half guard, basically all the pins, the back, mount, side control, and top half guard. And those 3 systems, those 3 pins, they're considered core. So before you can get your blue belt under us, we want you to be a proficient level in those 3 areas. The thinking behind it is that you want that to be something that is instinctual by the time you get further up the ranks, so that when you get to those positions, you don't go backwards. Do you know what I mean? So like when my students, I want them, when they get chest to chest with their opponent and they're connected, then they don't go backwards. You know, it's forwards only to the submission. So for a blue belt under us, like a homegrown blue belt, someone who started from nothing, then that's what we expect. So we make sure that those systems get covered in the span that we would expect for the blue belt. And it's just, they're all underlined by the same core concepts, especially the top pins. So the things like the 45-degree principle, controlling in range, anchor points, all those things which were in those articles, we can talk about if we get to it. They underpin everything. So once you understand them in one area, you understand them in others. So so there's no formal tests, but it's like, okay, you should know this. Because I shouldn't have to explain this to you at blue belt, because it's like the very fabric of our gym. If you roll with any of our students, you should feel that there's good pressure on top and good attacks from the back.
So do you separate your classes for like beginner or advanced, or is everyone together, or? do you have a beginner course, or do people just land?
So I don't know how it's going to be after, when we get back after all this, but before we stopped, it was a beginner's class, beginner's course, which was 3 times a week on rotation. Every 1 or 2 weeks would be like, top half guard, bottom half guard, just on rotation, just getting people familiar with what the positions are and, basic beginner stuff, teaching concepts, so like a conceptual approach, like teaching people the why and giving them the tools to understand.
Yeah.
Like the goal I think the goal as an instructor is to give your students the toolkit they need to answer the questions themselves.
Yes.
It's more
I had,
go on.
Yeah, completely. I had this conversation with one of my brown belts. That's one of the things that I've seen with Preet, and obviously with what we do, and how you explained the system approach when I met you was, I don't, and actually it kind of goes completely opposite to how we both learned, and that's why I was kind of curious about how you started and how you got to here. Is obviously we were both, something would happen, we'd go away, we'd go get an answer, but now we want to make it so no one ever has to do that again. We try and arm them with the tools to figure out mid-roll, right? Why is this happening? How can I make it stop? Even if it's chaos, even if they've never seen that situation, they have an answer. Obviously, so that from a defensive point of view, and yours is the other side of the coin. As soon as you get into a certain place, like if something changes, instead of it being a what ifism, as in having to teach like that, as in when you're just doing a technique in the gym, as in, oh, we get side control here, or what if their arm's here, or then you need to do this, or what if their arm's here, or then you need to do this. Then it's not, you're not teaching any concept, you're just teaching Rolodex techniques. This is a list, and you have to have an index of these and remember them, and that's why jiu-jitsu can seem like it's so huge.
It's more like teaching someone to drive. When you teach someone to drive, you teach them the basic functions of how the car goes, turns, stops. You don't go and say, right, I live in Swansea, here's the map of Swansea. Like learn every single road, and do you know what I mean? It's like, and where you're going to turn left and where you're going to accelerate. You teach them how to operate and then they go off. So it's the same, jiu-jitsu it's never going to be paint by numbers. It can't be paint by numbers.
No.
And if you try and teach it like that, you can't expect people to problem solve.
No, exactly. And that hinders their progress massively, because then they feel like jiu-jitsu is huge, and I've heard that so many times. Do you have a background in teaching? Where did this mentality come from?
No background. Just or I'm like most people, it's once I learn something, I feel like the best avenue for that information is try to give it to someone else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm too excited. I've like found this thing that I'm interested in. It's like, who's the first person I can tell this to? So as I was coming up through the ranks, super interested in it, would research it all outside of the classes, and then as soon as I would get the chance, I would try and share it with other people. And I from being like that, I ended up in a coaching role pretty early on. So I was like an assistant coach at the first gym from a blue belt. So it was just kind of like thrust into that situation where, okay, so now I have to really try and get this information across to people who want to learn it. And it's like the same with my jiu-jitsu. It's an ongoing process. I'm always changing how I think things should be delivered best. So that's like when you asked about the type of classes we have, where I'm at now, I'm thinking of like amalgamating everyone into the same class, apart from like an intro session where complete beginners can go and feel comfortable. Having the next tier more open, where you've got higher grades and more novice people all working together, working on the same thing. But yeah, so it's always changing. It's like the same. If you're interested in learning and understanding anything, then you'll always be working at it and trying to improve it. When we started CF24 about 5 years ago, we wanted to do it completely different how we'd learned. So it's like how we would train in our small training group outside of class. There would be a lot of like open discussion, a lot of like note taking and diagram drawing and like real focus on like trying to hit as many different avenues as we could to understand what we were trying to figure out. And then when we started our own place, it was like, all right, let's see if we can do that small group mentality of understanding and teach it to a room full of people. So a lot of our classes, and it's still the same now, we'll have a whiteboard up and I will draw the diagrams I think are best to understand what's being discussed. And it will be taught or discussed in that range, like a visual, pictures. Students can take photos, make their own notes from it, and then try and transfer that to the discussion with the partner, and then lots and lots of pressure testing to try and get the understanding across, from a more kinetic range.
That's interesting, because I've had a few conversations, obviously various people, but most on these podcasts as well, is the best way, or not the best way, but different ways of coaching the techniques. I came through obviously self-taught for the most part, but when I could go travel to London or Birmingham or something, I'd go, train in London Fight Factory or go to Braulio's. It was always predominantly the same. It was always warm up, drill, spar. And it was kind of like that's all I knew, because that's all I was seeing. I'd go to enough gyms where I'd follow that formula that I just assumed that's what it was. We have come at it entirely differently. Pre obviously changed most of that, and like I said, that if you want the best, you're open to change. How do you shape your classes then? Like you've just said about how you have the whiteboard, and how the typical session, if I was just to land in your gym, like traveling through, what would a typical session look like?
So we don't warm up in the traditional sense. Not for jiu-jitsu. So if it's more of a judo session, then obviously a bit more warm up if the body's getting thrown. But jiu-jitsu is we either roll lightly to warm up, or we do some sort of drilling. The thinking behind that is you're trying to engage the brain more than the body in that moment. Again, jiu-jitsu is the type of sport where people can compete without warming up. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so we're more focused. Well, I'm more focused on getting the brain taking over for the session. So just a warm up and a drill.
It's funny you should mention that. I had a podcast with Naki, one of my students, the other day, and it caused a bit of discussion on the channel, the Discord channel got attached to this. I said about my pre-competition warm-up routine, because I've been on Grapple Fest a few times, is I go for a nap. I'll go have a sleep, and then about 10-15 minutes before I'm due on, I'll wake up and I'll get a notepad out and I'll write down everything that I want to happen in that competition, in that role. We went a bit deeper and we went on about how I'm not thinking too much about what they're going to do, because I don't want to be answering their questions necessarily. I want to be asking my own. So yeah, I just work through. I want to do this. I'm going to do this. I need to remember to do this. And that's it. And now I walk on. And I had more success doing that than the atypical needing a warm up space and everyone stretching and doing weird star jumps. And that's what I then kind of took over into the regular class anyway. As in, I thought, well, if you've been awake, your body's warm. Like if you've been moving around in the day, drilling will warm you up anyway, or just movement through learning, and then you won't just jump hard. You know, it's a gradual process. It's not warm up drill, because normally the drill's slower than the warm up. So you're cooling people down.
Exactly.
It should be like a build up, as in learn, pressure test, spar, like increase. So it's pretty funny for you to say the exact same. Like we're one of the only sports where people go in without warming up. I'm like, oddly enough, said that about 3 days ago.
Yeah, it's the normal sessions. It's skill acquisition. That's why you're there. So it's like it's about engaging the brain and getting the body coordinated. But you can do that with a light roll. Like people, especially because in the Cardiff, so I teach across 2 gyms, Swansea and Cardiff, and in Cardiff it's like sport jiu-jitsu mainly. In the Swansea gym we do MMA as well, so it's like different but if you ask people to run around the mat in Cardiff, they would look at you like you had 3 heads, because we just never do it. And the way that you should approach, I think people should approach any session, especially even when it gets to the sparring, is it's all skill acquisition. So if you have had a fairly moderate class where you haven't exerted yourself too much, and then you go balls to the wall in the first round of sparring, like one, that's not the best way to learn anything, but it's also not the smartest thing to do if you might have some areas of your body you need to warm up before you spar hard. So but yeah, so typical session would be that, and then the new approach I've really latched on to, trying to make sessions for the regular hobbyists as close to a pro session as we can, like a pro session where we would be looking to acquire skill, rather than a pro session where you're sparring hard for an hour. So there's 2 types of pro sessions. When you're in a pro setting, so say we're a room full of black belts and we're all competitive, or we're all and we've turned up to train with each other, most of the time is spent as discussion and how we can progress either as a room or as an individual in the allotted time that we have. And for me, that's the most beneficial way to learn, because you take ownership of what you're doing. You take ownership of what you're learning. You take ownership of the things that you do, your intention. So I wanted to take that as to the hobbyist sessions, so that they had the same kind of responsibility for what they were learning. Because it falls into the same idea of why you would prefer to teach concepts and paint by numbers. Because if you're telling someone, here's the answer, step by step by step by step, they are waiting for you to give them the answer when the step is different, or the step has to extend. Whereas, jiu-jitsu, you don't get spoon-fed it. You have to take it upon yourself. So hence the conceptual approach. So the classes would be around the same theme, but varying levels of intensity with positional sparring and a range of constraints. So, you're in this position, you cannot control, top half guard, you have to try and pass. Resistance is 60% each, but you can't control your opponent's head. So you have to try and pass without controlling. So you have to, there's constraints you have to work around. The resistance isn't too much that you can't work at all, but it's not so light that it's pointless. And then as people start acquiring the skill, okay, now it's 70%, now it's 80%, and that's a feeling out process. What I think is 60% might be different from what you think 60% is. We have to we have
There
to
has to be
come
that
here.
conversation. You have to have that with your partner, as in, again, if it's boggles my mind when, I mean, I can understand wanting quiet, but when people ask for silence, as in go away, drill 5 minutes, or I don't know, 20 reps or something like that, a numbers game, like you were lifting weights in the gym, in silence. Like, you should be able to feed back, like I said, that kind of pressure, like, so like 60% of you is going to be different to me. As the person on the bottom or the person on top, I should be able to say, can you just up the resistance a little bit on that? Or actually, no, I was having a hard time grasping that one. Can you lower the resistance a little bit? And playing it accordingly. If you were to just have a dead, like, lying there grappling dummy partner, it's like, well, why the hell are we even here? Why don't we just buy grappling dummies? And
Jiu-Jitsu, because there's, I think in sports science they call it degrees of freedom. So there's different levels of variability, or what's the word? Different levels of complexity with different modes of the fight. So let's say we were doing judo. There's lots of degrees of freedom in our movement. There's lots of joints involved. We're standing up, we're moving around. So it's one of those things where it's more difficult to get to a level of competency with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, but with jiu-jitsu, it's very low level of degrees of freedom. Like, the complexity is small in terms of the like you said, like the grappling dummy version of the positions. Like, it shouldn't take me long to understand I'm on my knees, I'm controlling this person with my arms in this position, and then, whatever the pass may be, you're sticking with top half. That shouldn't take you too long to be like, okay, I understand how my body moves. So that definitely forms part of the session, but that's like, all right, you've done that in 5-10 minutes. The rest of the session should be 60%, 50%, 70%. Do you know what I mean? Like, for skill acquisition. So I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of having totally static drills is definitely not the best way forward.
One thing I started to incorporate, like trying to push as well, maybe in the final few months of teaching, before it all went to shit, was the idea that, again, just from the experience of being, because I apart from when I've traveled to different gyms, which was few and far between, I admit, in my first year or how long it was of training, I had never drilled. I always picked up from watching and sparring, and being curious, like, wonder if this will work. But so I haven't got maybe the right experience to be able to deliver like what kind of drilling we should do apart from what I've seen. But one thing I started to request was more of a ownership from the person on having this thing done to them, as in, say if because the greatest paradox is you'll never feel your own side control, like you'll never know your own pressure, and so you can inflict pain and never feel it. But I then got into the habit of, like, maybe because I was teaching that, if someone asks me a question, I'll say, do it to me, because I want to feel them do it. And so I'll say, oh no, like move that there, no, put that pressure there. And that kind of gave me the idea then of, like, because the amount of times I'd do that and then be like, oh shit, that hurts more. And so I'd, like, part of that pressure process of feeling it out is I'd ask the person at the bottom to take ownership of their own learning as well, and say, actually, no, move that to there. Like, can you up this a little bit more? Like, be more curious as the person. Not, again, don't be a grappling dummy. Be more curious and say, like, oh, when you do the stack here, can you stack me a little bit harder? Because I want to know what that feels like. Because then you can kind of take it to what you're going to do to them later on. Because again, like, it's so much harder to be doing something to someone and know how it's feeling, apart from the maybe the occasional squeal and the tap. I learn more from having things done to me.
It has to be realistic. But yeah, I think feeling what if I'm teaching a certain position and you can kind of see that people aren't quite getting it, showing them what it feels like to have it done to them, so they kind of know what cues they should be expecting from their partner. Like you said, if you had it done to you, kind of it focuses you to where things are happening, because side control, as an example, can look exactly the same and can feel completely different depending on the amount of positioning and pressure that the person on top is creating. So it falls into why the approach that we take is try and like get as many things as you can to deliver the information. This is what it looks like. This is what drawing of it looks like. This is an analysis of a video of a top level guys doing it. Here's what it feels like, and going, and then just seeing which one sticks with the student. Because as long as one of them sticks, then you've done your job.
Yeah. This is all like super interesting. Obviously we never got a chance to have that big conversation when you said you created a process for pretty much what Preeta done for defense, you've made for offense. One thing I would like to go on to, like I say, you sent me the articles that you'd written. Just so anyone listening or watching, are they hosted anywhere? Because I know you just sent me them as downloads. Are they hosted anywhere that I could link in the description for this?
They were on the website. That's why some of the images are my sketches. I can figure out how to put them somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe shareable link. I would like people to read them, because for those that don't, I wrote about 10,000 words on on pressure, passing, and control from the top. And it'd be nice. I do like people to read and comment and
just
see
for
if it makes sense.
Anyone obviously unaware of what we're currently speaking of. So I was given these downloads of pressure passing, and the detail, the concepts that are spoken of. I mean, it was 3 separate parts, and like I said, probably about 10,000 words each. It was massive, like 12. I think they're like 12 pages each, just on pressure passing, and the diagrams that you drill that were in there, and the annotations of stills from competitions, and like, holy hell, it was very impressive. You were talking about range as well, like you had like different options for different ranges of the fight, and that's one video I did when I first started doing these videos from home, was the idea of the pocket. Same as like range as well, as in like how to fight out of range or in range, or when it's not just black and white, it's distance in matters, like in boxing and wrestling. And so to have you even do these via diagrams, I was like, oh my god, this is some. I actually, when you were speaking, like, and after reading those and everything, are you going to be making like video content of this? Like, are you going to be like making a huge channel of information, or is this like close to your chest, in my gym, you have to come visit me kind of stuff?
No, the goal was to get some of it down. I didn't want to put it on the YouTube channel. I wanted to do, because we've got like a YouTube with some videos on. It's not kept up, but the idea was to get some of it down on like an instructional. So we've got one of our affiliates, they do the videos for like Polaris and things like that. So the goal was to put the fundamental concepts for pressure passing and pinning, and then I've got some unique techniques, like a way of passing the 3/4 mount, or that kind of quarter guard, half guard, where it's a way of passing that I haven't seen anyone else use, and I've seen a lot of jiu-jitsu, and it baffles me that people don't know about it. But it's like, it's an extra way of passing that position, which is very successful, the Stinger system. So the goal was to get all those down on video and put them out. But yeah, either that, or I was planning on trying to get to some Globetrotter camps.
Yes.
And see if I could work my way into coaching on there, because I spoke to someone on the email about coaching on there, and they said if you're someone who comes regularly, then we'll those are the people we consider. They must be inundated with people asking to coach on there. So.
Yeah, I've spoken to Christian before. He says like the number of people he has asking to coach on there is bonkers. Like, it just keeps growing.
Yeah.
And then he's told me some of the names as well. And I'm like, damn, like,
Yeah.
how the hell am I coaching there and this person isn't? Like, why? But
yeah,
he has his reasons.
Yeah, I do want to get it out there, because I think it's similar to what I've heard Prit say before about having like unifying the best content for jiu-jitsu in the different areas. Obviously paraphrasing what he said, but I think it's mutually beneficial. Like if someone understands the way that I've laid out the top position, it will make the defensive stuff you guys are working on better.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I've seen some element. So for example, people do side controlling, they don't do it incorrectly, but they categorize, they don't go deep enough into the categorization of it. When if I say to anyone, like, what does side control look like, it's not narrow enough. Like, there has to be a distinction between whether it's an open or a closed side control, whether this arm is between you and your partner or whether it isn't. And depending on that position, you should treat it completely differently on top.
Yeah.
Like, if the arm is between us, then you should treat it like you would treat how I think you should treat the guard. Do you know what I mean? Rather than treating it like most people think side control is like crossed like this. Yeah. And if your partner's arm's between you and them, it doesn't matter. You stay in that position. And that's not correct. It's not the best way to think about it on top. Which means if you have defenses for it on the bottom, it's against the wrong position on top. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's one thing I do my best to step away from. I occasionally have to use the same term, like the given nomenclature, but I try and steer clear of teaching side control, mount, north-south. I just literally say, as soon as you pass your guard, you should be just living in their armpits. If you're not opening up their arms and living in their armpits, then you shouldn't be stopping progression.
Yeah.
If their elbow can come down anywhere near their hip, which obviously you've met the running man stuff from Preet. If their elbow's free, it's coming down, it's meeting their hip, and the opportunity is gone. And so that opportunity for a regular side control, or even regular like mount, where someone has the opportunity to frame on you, because this has always been like my bugbear, is when I've ever gone anywhere it's been a mount-based class, the first thing that ever gets taught is, right, now, first thing we do, open up their elbows and move up into their armpits. Like, well, why don't you do that from step one? Like, you've created a side control and a mount. And it could be the case that, like, say, you could have that side control where you've actually moved into their armpit, but they transition to mount and you close their armpit off again. Like, you let their arm go free.
Yeah.
Instead of this idea of living up in that gap. Like, no, I don't care what you put there. Hip, knee, arm, arse, like, open it. Don't care. Keep it up there.
One of the idea of clicks, I find that a very good way of explaining, like, specifically this side control position, where if the idea is of control, or the best form of control is to have clicks on your opponent, if they've got an arm between you and them, there is no click there.
No.
They've defended the point where you should be clicking, if you're going to be that high on them, is the armpit. And if that's blocked and defended with the frame, then you're not in the correct position. The click is at the hip.
Yeah.
So the fight should be, if their arms on the inside, you collapse the bridge. So you walk down, you knock their legs over so they can't bridge into you. But then, so that's you know, that it's a logical conclusion you can come to if you have the tools that we're talking about. So if you're just the idea of clicks, you know, you don't have to know anything other than you're trying to click your body into your opponent. That should be something that's recognized from that position. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that side control is closed, and if you don't respect it like you respect the guard, then you won't hold that position.
No,
Again, people who are worth hold, like I always caveat this. I'm always trying to get to the answer of how do I beat that person that's worth beating.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if they're same grade as me or more, whatever. That's the person I'm trying to make sure this works on. Not, you know, I'm 85 kilos and they're 65 kilos.
Yeah.
Because you could be wherever you want and control them. You should be able to control them. So.
Yeah, of course. Well, no, completely. Like again, it's maybe stepping into that traditional martial arts part of jiu-jitsu that still kind of, like I said, the conceptual approach with so many great coaches now appearing on YouTube and getting their voices heard is making this old kind of system fade away. But the simple idea that you can have people like coaches get side control where the frame already exists, like their arse is up in the air and the other person's like just naturally lying in the T-Rex, and then they just go from there, and that's what people are watching. That's what they think side control should look like, and then they get to that position, go for an Americano, all of a sudden it just gets rolled or regarded or something stupid. It makes the game so much harder.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to say. I might have said it, but there's always an "it depends" that should come at the end of it. You know, if like, but my ideal jiu-jitsu, the thing that I'm trying to like always work towards is the attribute-free version of it.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, so there are ways of mitigating being over the top of I'll call it closed side control because that's how we refer to it. There are ways of dealing with that and holding your partner down. So it's like, it's not that it's wrong, I might be, but it's not the most efficient.
Yeah.
Like I have to work much harder to hold this, and my partner will have a much better chance of escaping it. Whereas if I'm down and collapsing the bridge and focusing on the hip and just keeping the elbows off the floor, I can be totally relaxed in that position. So I've removed the attributes from the situation, because for me, like fundamental jiu-jitsu is any jiu-jitsu, any position. It's not like basic positions, but it's attribute free.
Yeah.
Like, does your positioning mean that you're winning or you're in the best position for the scenario? Do you know what I mean? Like it should be free of, you know, you shouldn't have to be flexible to make fundamentals work. You shouldn't have to be strong to make. There's a place for that. You know, obviously we've got lots of guys who compete and use all your attributes when you compete in, but when you're understanding fundamentals and learning them, it should be, for me, the goal should be free of attributes. So that's, you know, when like I said, I'm a fundamentalist. So it needs to be done in a certain way for it to be classed as fundamental in my eyes.
Yeah. Well, there's a logic behind everything. Like to assume that jiu-jitsu came written on some sort of stone tablet by some deity 100 years ago and handed to Mr. Gracie as he climbed a mountain is absurd. It's a machine. It's physics and biology. It's science, and we apply ourselves to the machine, and we get technique out the other end. And yeah, if you can understand the machine, if you can understand the science, it pretty much circles back around to everything we've been saying on this episode. Is it doesn't matter what that other person does. Like, it doesn't matter if they're flexible. It doesn't matter if they're strong or static or whatever. Like if I understand the science of what they're doing, I may have never seen the technique they're using. Doesn't mean I don't understand the science of why it's working, and I can counter it accordingly. And yeah, that's the information that I want my students to have. I want them to be able to, from day one up. Like if some, I don't want them to come to me with questions. I want them to have the answers themselves. Like if there's a problem with their understanding of the science, come to me, please. But I want them to know that if they, from a defensive aspect, if they're in a bad place, I'll say, well, where was your elbow 2 seconds ago? And if the answer isn't tied to my hip, sir, I know roughly where you went wrong. And again, it applies to most of the scenarios.
I think the conceptual approach, one of the kind of like resistance we had to it when we first started was, it was kind of thought that you had to be experienced to understand the concepts, which in a way is kind of cyclical, because you don't really understand it properly until you're more experienced. But unless you have your eyes open to it from the start, then it's going to be a longer road to get to that point of understanding. Like, my goal is always to make sure that my students don't make the mistakes that I made. Because I feel like when I was learning jiu-jitsu, it was like, do you know what I mean? Like, this is the path. But so my goal as an instructor and a coach is to get it as straight as possible. Like, get the valuable information and the understanding from the start, and just work towards the goal rather than, just being all over the shop.
It's that difference. It's making sure that you don't teach as you were taught. It's teach as you are now.
Yes, exactly.
And it's a difficult thing to traverse, because you think, if I teach you how I was taught, eventually you'll become as I am now.
Yeah, no.
Except what got me to here wasn't the best route at all on the map. It was everywhere and nowhere at once. But if I can show the most logical way, and again, it's a great admission, like, especially coming through jiu-jitsu when we did, like, black belts were few and far between. And so there was that reverence to them, and they're like seen as some sort of godlike person. And now we've both got there, it's like, oh wait, I'm still human. And so it's admitting that I'm like, actually one of the best bits of advice I ever got, not advice, but like just tidbits, was from Simon McGovern. Who obviously isn't that far away from me. And we were going to try and get him for a seminar, just a local seminar, I think. And I asked if I could record it. And he said, you can, just don't put it anywhere. I was like, yeah, that's fine. Obviously, you don't want your techniques to go anywhere. He goes, no, it's because what I understand now is going to be different to what I understand in 1 year's time. So what you record will be out of date. And just that alone, hearing that from a black belt for the first time, as in, I am admitting right now I am wrong. I just don't know how I'm wrong right now.
I always feel that about putting in stuff online. Not so much about the understanding of it, but the way that it's taught, the way that it's delivered.
It's always going to get better. Like the stuff I put out initially, like 2 years ago, like that the Defend Everything video that kind of took off. I look back at that now and think, my God, I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. Like,
if you don't feel like that, then you'd have to worry. Especially as a gym owner and a coach, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't feel like that about what your own development, then I guess you've lost the passion for it.
Yeah, of course. It's just, you're just there, just hoping that money keeps coming in and people keep showing up, instead of, I want to. It's kind of, it's funny that you have white belts come in, like beginners, and they jump into their classes, they start to get a bit of a grasp of jiu-jitsu, then they go off into the YouTube rabbit hole, and they come back and they go, have you heard of this guy called Eddie Bravo? And they start doing all magical shit, like it makes me giggle. And then the further you go up the rankings, the more you're like, I don't care about being upside down and stuff like that. I want to know, if I move my elbow 1 inch in this direction, will that make your head explode? And it just gets more and more. And so that's pretty much where it has ended now. There's I don't give a shit about technique. I want to understand the science, more and more every day.
Yeah. I'd rather go, well, I think it's a natural progression as you get more experience. You're less worried about widening the knowledge. You're more concerned with making it deeper.
Yeah, that's brilliant to say, actually. It's a shame that some of these people who may listen to this via podcast and couldn't see you demonstrate that on the video.
I did a very good.
Yeah, it was awesome. They're missing out on the background as well, the CF24 one. Like all those poor people on Spotify right now listening to this on their way to work. Yeah, I completely. It's again, like majority of people I imagine listen to this are, white, blue, purple belts, and so for you to say and agree with the idea that we get better, even like we've hit the top belt and we still don't know what the fuck we're on about. We've got a rough grasp of it, but
especially with jiu-jitsu, because it's broad, fair enough. It's like it's no, but there's whole games with like, so I've recently, over the last, when we've been able to train over the last year or so, fallen in love with judo.
Yeah.
Like, our style at our gym is it's pressure heavy, be on top. So naturally the stand-up element has to be incorporated into that.
Yeah.
So like, I'm a white belt again in that. It is part of jiu-jitsu, like the stand-up game is part of jiu-jitsu, but I'm also a white belt in it. Do you know what I mean? So, and it won't change. And you can broaden it as much as you want. So with our MMA team, like, okay, well now there's strikes involved. Like, what does jiu-jitsu look like when there's strikes? So you can always reset yourself back to a white belt in terms of the amount of information you've got ahead of you to try and assimilate, and it never stops. It might be that you're a white belt, blue belt, purple belt, and that is jiu-jitsu, but again, that's broken down into positions. Am I on top? Am I playing guard? Am I on the back? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's vast. And I think if you ever lose that kind of mentality where you can always make it better, you can always go deeper into your understanding of it, or you can always start afresh on something else that you need to get deeper on, then you probably won't be training jiu-jitsu much longer.
Yeah, of course.
I think when people think of getting to the black belt, they think that your knowledge is that deep on everything. Yeah. But it's like, it'll be deep enough in all the positions, but it won't be like, as it'll be deeper in other aspects, other areas, depending on what your preference is. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's something that Chris Hoyter said, is that it's not the black belts that invent techniques, it's the blue belts and purple belts. It's just the black belts steal them. Like, we don't, and we just put our names to them. Like, we've got the depth of knowledge, but we're not. It's depth across multiple areas, and maybe only something like true depth in something specific that we're currently working on and got a deep interest in. That's not to say that blue belts are super inventive and going all over the place and like, oh, I'll try this, and oh shit, that works. And it's that kind of humbling at the top, as in we aren't like godlike. We're still white belts that are just like been around. The white belts who never left. Yeah, we're still that way. We're just quite at the same time.
The ones that were too obsessed with it.
Yes,
the ones we should have had something else to do.
Yeah, we've had 10, 11 years. We could have picked up something else in that time. We decided not to. So when we get back into the gyms, then you said that you're going to shake things up with how you teach classes. Is that based on, have you had much interest since going quiet? Because our emails have been blowing up. Like, I don't know what the hell's happened. Has there been some sort of big press release or news thing about jiu-jitsu? Because I have no idea why there's a sudden interest in it. That's actually changed how I'm now going to be. I have to now really focus on doing a very in-depth beginner course, because just chucking people into regular classes, that's no longer an option.
So how were you doing it then before? What was your strategy?
Mostly it was just like, because we're not that big, it's a small town, and even for a small town, I think we're only like 65,000 people. We have 3 black belts in town from different gyms. So we've got myself, we've got Dave Briggs, who's under Ben Poppleton.
Yeah.
And now we've got Martin Jones, who's a black belt under Braulio. So he's got his own Gracie Barhage that showed up. Yeah. So there's not that many people into jiu-jitsu in such a small town. So we're still, I don't know, 30 odd, 50 people. So it was just kind of a case of everyone kind of, we didn't have enough intake to warrant it. But when things started to actually then pick up just before we disappeared, I was like, right, we actually need a beginner course, and what does that beginner course look like? So sat down, designed it. And now the numbers that are appearing in emails now are like, oh, I'm really interested in starting jiu-jitsu after turning to pudding during this time off.
Yeah, me too.
I'm like, holy hell. Now it needs to be way more in depth. So it is like an 8-week course of just covering, because before it's like people arrive and I'd almost like give the room to all my brown belts and say, like, you guys teach this, what I'm hoping to do tonight. I'll just take this newbie to the side and say, look, you need to know this. Yeah. Put this in there and don't move and you'll be fine. Yeah. And so they'd survive their first night. But now it's kind of canonized into something that makes more sense. Yeah, so it was a question of stepping away from the conceptual side ish.
Yes.
Have you had a weird intake of like more people, and are you? Could you say you're having an actual beginner course and then just everyone else? Is that based on this, or is that something you're planning beforehand?
So we've had lots of interest. Again, there's especially the Swansea gym, because we do MMA as well. Lots of people interested in starting that. I find it funny that they think that I know something more than they do. It's like about whether we can train or not.
Yeah, I keep getting that. It's like, oh, can we go back when the gyms open up? When I was like,
I don't know. Hang on, I'll just message Boris and ask him.
Yeah, we've got a straight line to him. Like, because he specifically talks about easing of like kids to schools and jiu-jitsu. Like, those are like the main topics that he delves into.
Well, there's that, and there's, have you got classes on? It's like, what? We're not allowed out the house. What are you on about?
Yeah, exactly. Like, but yeah, it's keeping them interested.
Yeah, so we set up a waiting list and we got their emails, so they'll just get an email done. In terms of the beginners content, I've gone through lots of different permutations of it, obviously always trying different things. What I am intending to do when we go back is try and basically train people up to be able to positional spar safely. That's my goal, because what I was at different permutations of the beginner's course, but I'd have people come in on their first session. I'd give them like a brain dump based on like the side control stuff we were talking about, different ways of controlling and all this stuff. But what you got to remember is, if you remember back to your first class, is you won't remember that in a week's time, let alone 4 months time. But what you will remember is the times when it starts to go a bit live. Do you know what I mean? It starts to turn into and one of the biggest drop-offs that we get with beginners is through them getting to a point where they can spar, and then going too hard and getting injured and they don't come back. It's like jiu-jitsu is not for everyone. Like it never will be. Combat sports aren't for everyone. Like it's physically challenging, it wrecks your ego. You know, like, there's so many reasons why, you know, you sweaty people in contact, all that stuff. So I never expect for everyone to stay on. So what I'm going to look to do is still use a similar content of you know, going through the positions, but less heavy on the kind of deliverable of technique, more okay, this is how you can get to a point of sparring in this situation. You know what I mean? Like this is what it means to grapple and not go completely nuts. Do you know what I mean? This is what it looks like. You know, this is what 30% means to you. 40% resistance means to you. Because ultimately for me, that the biggest value for the students is getting them into the main class. Because I think I heard Dan Strauss talk about this, because I think he was, when he was teaching, was doing a similar thing of teaching big chunks of information, like long systems basically. But if you imagine 10 years to black belt, there's no rush in how that information gets across, because it's going to take you however many years to get there. So 6 months on one, that's extreme, but 6 months on one system, if you don't know anything other than that system, but you know that system to a deep level because you've done it for 6 months, then you already know lots of things in other areas. You know what I mean? Like there's crossover. You understand, like the principles, the concepts, you know, the things that you're doing, there'll be crossover to other things you do. So and you and you have an understanding of what understanding it means. So then you'll know when you've reached it in other areas. So for me, it's about getting them comfortable, getting them understanding that this is what jiu-jitsu is, this is what a class is, you know, this is how close you're going to be to this person, and you know, but then getting them to a point where you can get them into the main class as soon as possible.
So I think, I don't think it was in the book, but I think it's from a seminar that I went to on Christian Graugarts back when I was a white belt up in Bolton at Carl Fisher's place. I think he might have said it there. This was pre-Globetrotter camp. This was like when the Globetrotter affiliation was just like something he was about to release. He mentioned the idea of like if you're serious about jiu-jitsu, you're going to be here forever anyway. Choosing something and like making that yours for the next year. Like so, you know, you go to your regular classes and you know, do your regular learning, but then just have something that's yours. Like have a pass or a sweep or a submission or an escape or whatever. And every opportunity you get, use it. Just like fail it a million times for the next year. You have to use it every session, and you'll learn a million ways of how that thing works. So that's similar to, you know, obviously you can have it's taking ownership of your own learning. You can, like you say, you have that natural side effect of if you do something for like 6 months, there's so much area around that then they'll understand. But I just tell them that anyway, as in even if it's not my plan, like if we're doing a month or 2 months or something, is I'll say, look, find something that personality and physicality you enjoy, and that's all you're going to, I call it the kitchen fridge, as in you're going to write this on your kitchen fridge, and that's now yours for the next year. Like every opportunity you have, you go, right, I need to do that technique, and you come back to me in a year's time, you'll know everything around that technique. I've got one lad who started a few months before, you know, when we did odd training last year, and he had like an inclination towards lockdown. I was like, right, every role you're going to play lockdown. And so the amount of questions then he was asking me of, oh, where could I, you know, and he started to play butterfly, he started to play more half guard, and all that just kind of blossomed out of that single, I'm just going to play lockdown all the time. And now he's got like a game kind of growing around it. So that sounds similar to, like, you know, to what you've just been saying, as in instead of it just being disparate techniques of we're just going to do I don't know, armbar, triangle, unplatform guard. It's like, right, let's have something that kind of makes sense, that it grows out every session, it kind of emanates outwards, and you get a full understanding of what we're actually doing, instead of, I don't know, this is the techniques I thought on the car on the way here.
It surprised me that people don't treat the sessions. Again, I think as people are, I don't know, they're worried that it's something that the students won't take to, maybe. Like,
Yeah.
think they'll get bored that they're doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's, as long as there's plenty of pressure testing, then it's impossible to get bored of it, because you're always having to put it to the fire. You know what I mean? Whereas if it was just drilling the same thing for weeks and weeks, and I can see how that would get boring. But we found, like, we very rarely get students asking for one-to-ones, because the content, the way that we basically, like I said, we get as many as ways of informing them and just lobbing it at them. I think they feel so, like, satiated with the information and the classes.
Yeah.
We don't often get people asking for one-to-ones. Do you know what I mean? Thinking that there's something missing from what they're doing. It's just being bold enough to do it. Do you know what I mean? Just like, teaching with a whiteboard. Like, you just have to be like, well, I learn all right like this.
Yeah,
So
of course.
I can explain it well with this, so make it part of the class. Like, why not? There's no rule book. You know what I mean? Like, I've already thrown away the warm up, so why won't I change?
Yeah, exactly.
The other aspects of it as well.
Last question then. When things return, did you used to do many seminars, and are you looking to get more into those, and like trying to expand your system across? Because I say, I mean, how you've approached your jiu-jitsu and how you've approached the concepts, does that work in a seminar platform? And are you going to be, because I know you said about obviously the camps, but are you going to be going everywhere as well with this?
Yeah, I've done a couple of seminars locally. Yeah, I'd love to do more. I love talking about jiu-jitsu, so
Yeah.
And explaining. Yeah, so what I don't do much of is like put myself out there as a coach that does that kind of stuff. I like to, do my work in the gym, go out with my students, see them, do well in competition and MMA. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's always my kind of like expression of what I teach. But yeah, I'm definitely up for I would like to come up to you and pick your brains on the defensive stuff. Like, when I had Pritt down, obviously I'd seen him on the YouTube, and I'm always open-minded, and I'd fallen into the trap previously of like, don't turn away when they've passed your guard. And then he explained it, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, he's right. It's always, it depends. Like, why did I let it depends leave me for that one position? So as soon as I was like, right, get him over, and then you came, and I was like, oh, there's someone who knows all this stuff, and they live up
the road. Well, actually, like you say that, like one thing that because myself, Preet, and Wim de Putte were over in Amsterdam at the 10th Planet Camp teaching back in September, and one idea I floated past both of them was doing a seminar somewhere in Europe, like a concept weekend. So choosing even one of our gyms, or like a open third party place, of pretty much choosing a subject for the weekend, and then just all three of us hitting it hard, and pretty much for an audience. And so your idea of like conceptualizing it, like I think having you there would be a lot of fun as well. Like having you from the definitely the offense side, like looking at the same problem. So yeah, hopefully if over the summer and the autumn time we can arrange that, because I think that'd be a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, that'd be wicked.
Yeah,
I'm a sponge as well. I always think that I'm either the best student or the worst, because when I'm into something, I will hound you and ask you questions until I'm satisfied that I've got something to move forward with. So yeah, I'm always up for that.
So hopefully we can get it to work.
I'd love to understand the defensive stuff more. Like, one of the reasons why I ended up writing those articles was because I found it helped me understand it more, and I actually made progress in my understanding by writing it. And it also helped me put the information across when I teach. But I'd love to do that for more areas. Do you know what I mean? Just like, I've got some ideas for the guard, half butterfly type, like dealing with a kneeling opponent, which basically uses the idea of range and how that basically helps you attack from the bottom. But yeah, I'd love to basically steal as much as your defensive stuff as I can, and
I think we can a bit of mutual stealing actually.
Streamline it and write, even if I always find that's a good way of understanding it, just writing it out long form.
Yeah, or just teaching. Like, I think I've learned more from teaching than I ever did from training. Like, the amount of times like I'm saying something and you see my eyes light up because I'm actually realizing it as I'm saying it.
Yeah,
like it's the same. Like it's the same with a few of the videos I've done. Like, as I'm talking, I'm like, holy shit, like I didn't realize I could do this as well. I just try and hide the face.
I relate to that, because sometimes I've been explaining something in the moment understanding it further than I understood it when I started talking about it.
Yeah,
It's, I don't know, it's hard to, it's a weird one to explain, but if you've had that same experience, you know what I mean. But I think externalizing it is useful.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like putting it across, and as long as you always set the caveat that you might be talking shit. You're wrong. You know what I mean? This is how I understand it now. Like, don't hold me to this, but then
well, I've had a student, I was teaching him a few years ago, and then he came to me. He disappeared for a bit. He came back, and I was teaching something different. He said, "Well, you said this 2 years ago." I was like, "Yeah, but I was wrong."
Yeah.
And that's one thing. Like, I started trying to get. I set aside a session where I try and get anyone from blue belt and up take the class. Like, just teach what you're into, like your thing, because by blue belt you have a thing. Like that you have interest in. I was like, just teach your thing, like get some experience teaching, like please, like give it wide form to an audience, and just to see if they start having those similar moments of, why am I doing this? Like, now I've had to try and explain it to 20 people. Why am I actually grabbing this here? And you can see that the wheels started to go at that point. I was like, well, there's no reason you can't. I did.
Yeah. I think it's important. I think, just like I think everyone should have a go at competing. I think it's, I never force a student to compete, but I personally think it's better if you at least give it a go at least once at each belt if you can. Because I think you get so much like the fear of doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, sleepless nights thinking about the fact that it's going to happen, and then it happens, and there's always that like release afterwards. You're like, fuck, I'm going to do it next week. Do you know what I mean? But
just the stress for a week watching the scales to make sure you're on weight and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's like, so I think people, it's important to do that at least one, especially if you do a combat sport, at least once. But the same with teaching. Like, you should be able to verbalize and put across what you know. Do you know what I mean? And the only way you do that is by doing it. There's like instructors, like we said, they get better as time goes on. They have to improve how they teach as they go along, because you think, oh shit, I said that and it's not right, or whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't understand it very well that time, or they go off and they drill and they're doing it completely wrong, and it's like, oh well, I didn't tell them how to do it properly.
Yeah.
But I think it helps you set the information in your mind. So that's a good thing. Good thing that you do. Putting them. Do you give them any notice, or you just shove them out in front of the class?
I'll ask them maybe like a few days, like maybe it used to be like a week in advance. I'd say, can you do next Thursday or something? And like, you know, I'd even sit there at the back of the room and just like, yeah, I want to watch your class. Like, what are you going to talk about? It was usually interesting. Like some of the guys who I was initially asking to start running classes are now, you know, they're brilliant instructors in their own right. They know their stuff. I'm like, good. I want this. I want all of this. This has been awesome. Like, so I realize that I am taking a large portion of your evening. This has been a lot of fun. Like, I was so excited that you even agreed to this, just because I was meeting you, and like we also had that role in Cardiff, and it was like Harry Potter and Voldemort, like clashing. Like it was so evenly matched in like different aspects, like your deep offensive knowledge versus my deep defensive knowledge. Like what's going to happen? And like I'm just going to beat you with nothing, and you're just going to like hit a brick wall repeatedly.
I got 8 more kilos now, so might be able to.
Yeah, I think we all have. Like you can just like see there's a board, just my obviously on the camera. There's a board right next to me that I've written my weight on, and so every week I like it's going down, and this is where my competition weight is. It has gone down. I think
it's middle heavy now.
Yeah, I think I hit Brock Lesnar levels at one point, so I had to get back down to Saint Pierre. Hopefully, then when obviously you know if it's a month, 2 months, 3 months away, that everything's relaxed off, that we can travel around. I look forward to bringing down a group or vice versa, and yeah, we'll definitely play. So like, thank you for this. It's been great, and yeah, I think I said to you, might have been just before we started recording. You're like some sort of unknown UK Danaher. Hopefully, people can listen to some of this, and if you can get the article hosted. I don't want to host it on my site; it's yours.
You said you had a Discord.
Yeah, I've got the Discord channel. If you don't, obviously I've got various people already on there. I've got about 60, 70 people on there. Would you have a problem me posting it in there, or?
No, go for it.
Okay, cool. I'll put it in there. So anyone listening to this, there's the Discord channel that's always linked. I'll host the. I'll see if I can post the attachments for the article in there of pressure passing. Honestly, the detail makes Jiu-Jitsu University look like a children's book. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have my head stamped on by very good people for saying that. But yeah, the amount of detail makes it look like a Jiu-Jitsu University is like a paint by numbers.
It's very applicable stuff as well.
Yeah. Oh, completely.
I think like it gives you that toolkit. You know, where do I put my hands? Where do I put my body? It's.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's been beneficial for my students, because it's detailed, but the application of it is actually pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You can go and use it pretty early on. But yeah, I'd love more people to read it. At least if they got any questions about it in your Discord as well, I'll answer anything.
Are you on there, or should I just forward them on to you?
What now? Oh, right.
Because obviously on the Discord, it's like everyone's got pseudonyms and it's all nicknames, so I have no idea who anyone is. It could also be my students just humoring me, like for all I know, just to like take the piss. All that just bot accounts. But yeah, I'll make sure.
Discord?
Pardon?
Is it an open Discord or is it closed?
I don't know how it works. All I do is I put an invite out there. So there's an invite at the bottom of every video and
for anyone
podcast.
to join.
Yeah, everyone can just click on it.
I'll
and
just
jump
join
in.
it. I've got Discord.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm gonna. Anyone listen? This is Wednesday the 10th of March, and hopefully this is going to be hosted Wednesday the 10th of March. So hopefully, if you listen to this, it's close to Wednesday the 10th of March, and Omied will be in the Discord, hoping to chat to people about his fundamentalist concepts of offense.
I wrote the first two when I was a purple belt, and the second one when I was a brown belt, and it still holds up. So.
Oh, completely. Like again, it's like
I'm up for questions.
The detail in there. So yeah, I'll say thank you. I'll go do all my behind the scenes work, and yeah, I'll see you on there soon, hopefully, and everyone else who wants to ask questions on this, and I'm sure many other things. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, dude.
No worries.
I'll see you soon.
Cheers. Bye.